Hello everybody and welcome back to Lost Planeswalker. You're here with me, Jesse, the Lost Planeswalker, and today we're doing Kona Rescue Beastie. This is a very cool creature that lets you put things onto the battlefield for free. So let's see how this works. Kona here has a survival ability, and that basically means at the beginning of your second main phase, if Kona is tapped, then this ability will trigger. And in this case, Kona lets you put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield, which is a very, very strong effect. Obviously, you have some really big drops. So the deck is going to be focused around those big hits. Secondly, we're going to look at some value pieces, maybe to help you continue going. And then lastly, of course, is the good stuff. Stuff that'll help round out this deck. So let's see, starting with those big hits, what we got.
So starting out by looking at those big hits, we're going to be looking at some big artifacts that we're going to want to play for free with Kona, with Akroma's Memorial, Caged Sun, and Portal to Phyrexia. Akroma's Memorial is a 7-drop legendary artifact that's going to give creatures we control flying, first strike, vigilance, trample, haste, and protection from black and red. Very powerful card that if we have a ton of cards on the board already, we're probably going to be able to swing through and win the game there. Caged Sun, 6 generic artifact. As it enters, choose a color. Creatures of the chosen type get +1/+1, and whenever a land's ability causes you to add 1 mana, add 1 additional mana of that color. So of course we're going to be choosing green here, and all of our forests are going to tap for double green, which is very, very good. And then lastly, Portal to Phyrexia, 9 generic artifact. When Portal to Phyrexia enters the battlefield, each opponent sacks 3 creatures, which is insane. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under control. It's a Phyrexian in addition to its other types. Now, just these 3 cards here are like $80 or something, so there's definitely some big hits and some really great artifacts, but if you don't have the budget or don't own any of these, maybe replace them with some other really powerful but less expensive artifacts. Looking at some powerful ETBs from creatures though, we have Apex Altasaur, Apex Devastator, and Ghalta Stampede Tyrant. We have Apex Altasaur with 7 green creature dinosaur. Whenever Apex Altasaur enters the battlefield, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control, and has the Enrage trigger, meaning that whenever it's dealt damage, it then, in this case, will fight up to 1 target creature you don't control. This is a great way to pick off a ton of small creatures, use it to take out a couple big creatures, but it's up to, so you don't have to sacrifice it to dealing damage unless that's something you want to do. Apex Devastator, on the other hand, is 8 green that has Cascade. So this was a card I wanted to talk about because this is something you do want to cast. And there's lots of ways to generate a ton of mana in this deck so that we can cast this easier, but Cascade only triggers off cast triggers. One of the reasons this doesn't work is because Cascade triggers before it enters the battlefield. So it's a cast trigger, not a ETB trigger. So while this is a really good card that's going to help get some really big things out there, you want to be careful because if you are to put this onto the battlefield with Kona, you are getting a 10/10 creature, but you're not getting those 4 Cascade triggers like you might think. But then we have Ghalta Stampede Tyrant, 5 green, legendary creature Elder Dinosaur with Trample, and whenever it enters, put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Again, Apex Devastator isn't going to trigger from Ghalta, but it's still a great card to include and cast later on. Some really good value creatures that are going to give us some additional value to having them on the battlefield are Archetype of Endurance, Kodama of the East Tree, and Mojin of Life's Web. Archetype of Endurance is 6 green enchantment creature boar, with creatures you control have hexproof, and creatures your opponents control lose hexproof and can't have hexproof. This is a great way to protect our entire board, keeping it so our opponents can't target any of our pieces, and it also removes hexproof from any of their creatures, so if they end up getting it, we can just take it away. Kodama of the East Tree, a staple card, and really good in Kona here, but 4 green legendary creature spirit with reach. Whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't put onto the battlefield with this ability, you may put a permanent card with equal or lesser converted mana cost from your hand onto the battlefield. Whenever we're dumping really big things out of our hand, Kodama here is going to let us put an additional big thing onto the battlefield. And then Mojin of Life's Web, 6 green, legendary creature spirit. It comes into play with a divinity counter if you played it from your hand. Mojin of Life's Web is indestructible as long as it has a divinity counter on it, and remove a divinity counter from Mojin of Life's Web. Put any number of creature cards from your hand into play. This is another tricky card that I've seen in a lot of deck lists as I was building this deck. This is a cast trigger. Now, this is some old wording here that says if you played it from your hand, but you must cast it. So this is another great value card that I would really love to play in this deck to get a lot of things for free, but just be aware of that. Some other really big hitters we have are Ancient Bronze Dragon, Chamil the Inner Sun, Earthquake Dragon, Giant Ataphage, Impervious Great Worm, Kogla the Titan Ape, Nyx Bloom Ancient, Regal Force, Rishkar's Expertise, Samward Convergence, Terastodon, The Great Henge, Throne of Eldraine, Titan of Industry, Unnatural Growth, Verdant Sun's Avatar, Vigor, Wondrous Crucible, Woodfall Primus, World-Spied Worm, Zendikar Resurgent, and Zopandrel Hunger Domus.
Now, before we dive back into the deck and look at those value cards, I would just like to say, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. It would mean the world to me. Right now, I just started a Patreon, and I would love it if you would check it out. You're free to join it as normally, and I'm going to be posting some stuff there for everybody to see. But if you want to join that and kind of see videos that you want to see, and I'm going to have polls about decks that I'm going to be making, or video ideas to kind of get an idea from my audience what you're actually interested in, that's the place I'm going to be doing it. So if you'd be interested in checking that out, it would mean the world to me, or just following there would mean a big help to me as well. So let's dive right in and look at those value cards.
Now then, let's look at those really good value cards by starting at some value creatures that are going to help us generate a ton of mana and pump up our permanents. We have Ashaya, Soul of the Wild, Fanatic of Ronis, and Tyvar the Pummeler. Ashaya, Soul of the Wild, 3 green, legendary creature elemental. Ashaya, Soul of the Wild's power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control, and then non-token creatures you control are force in addition to their other types. One of my favorite abilities that people sometimes forget about Ashaya is that it turns your creatures into forests, which is really great because there are some removal spells that specifically say you cannot target lands, and that will prevent anyone from removing your creatures if they do have that spell wording on them. It is more of an advantage than you think and can be very powerful. Fanatic of Ronis is 1 in a green creature snake druid that taps to add a single green. It has ferocious, which means it taps to add 4 green if you have a creature with power 4 or greater, and then you can eternalize it later on to bring it back and put it onto the battlefield. Fanatic of Ronis is going to trigger almost immediately. It's a very great card. It triggers off our commander and obviously all the big hitters we want to put onto the battlefield. And then Tyvar the Pummeler, 1 green legendary creature elf warrior, tap another untapped creature you control. Tyvar the Pummeler gains indestructible until end of turn and tap it, but for 3 green, creatures you control get +X until end of turn, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Earthquake Dragon, Impervious Great Worm, World Spine Worm, all very, very big creatures that are going to buff up our board and make it a nightmare to try and get through. But some other really powerful effects that revolve around us having really big things on the board here are Defense of the Heart, Soul's Majesty, and Traverse the Outlands. Defense of the Heart is a great enchantment for 3 in a green that says during your upkeep, if one of your opponents controls 3 or more creatures, sacrifice this, search your library for up to 2 creature cards, and put them into play, shuffle your library afterwards. This card doesn't get enough play, and in Commander, it's so easy for one opponent to have 3 things very early on in the game, and if they do, we can just pull out whatever we want from our deck and put it directly onto the battlefield. Soul's Majesty is 4 in a green sorcery, where you draw cards equal to the power of target creature you control, and there's a high likelihood we're going to be drawing a ton of cards off of this, letting us put whatever we want onto the battlefield with Kona, and then Traverse the Outlands. Similarly, 4 in a green sorcery, search your library for up to X basic lands, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control, put those cards on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. In a mono green deck, we're going to have a lot of forests, and this is just going to help us ramp very, very efficiently. Some other great value cards, we have Court of Bounty, Eldritch Evolution, Emerald Medallion, Rook's Uprising, Guardian Project, Jasper Sentinel, Nissa Who Shakes the World, Paradise Mantle, Relic of Legends, Return of the Wild Speaker, Sovala, Heart of the Wilds, Springleaf Drum, and Toski, Bearer of Secrets. Now, normally I like to go through the good stuff cards in this deck, but honestly I think that the majority of the deck was already shown, and so I'll just read through those quickly with Arcane Signet, Autumn's Veil, Beast Within, Collective, Resistance, Cultivate, Elvish Mystic, Finhorn Elves, Llanowar Elves, Rampant Growth, Soul Ring, Veil of Summer, Worldly Tutor, and Wrap in Vigor. Like I mentioned, we're going to be playing a ton of forests, and you can go ahead and outfit this deck as you see appropriate. This deck does come in a little expensive because we have some really big hitters in it, so you might be more focused on getting some of these bigger creatures in your deck versus the few powerful forests that tap to add green outside of basics. So, like always, the land base is up to you.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed Kona Rescue Beastie. This was personally one of the decks I thought was going to be most interesting to build when it got released, and I hope you agree. Comment down below if you think there are some really great cards I didn't include. Maybe there's some great pieces that are going to give you additional value every turn, or something like that. In addition, if you'd please leave a like, share this video with friends, and subscribe, that would mean the world to me, so thank you, thank you, thank you. Now today's Scryfall card of the day is Hungry Spriggan. If a Spriggan's eyes are larger than its stomach, it has ways to remedy the situation. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you later, Planeswalkers.